Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So I want to start today's episode by reading you 4 famous quotes. I'm not going to tell you who said it. You're going to guess, and we're going to see if you can go 4 for 4. So quote number 1, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Quote number 2, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Quote number 3, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And quote number 4, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So, if you guessed John F. Kennedy, Neil Armstrong, Maya Angelou, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, give yourself an A+ on famous quotes. And listen, I love famous quotes, and they've become famous for a reason. And you know that I'm a big fan of James Clear and his book, Atomic Habits. And I've done 2 previous episodes on taking the leadership lessons from that book and applying them to our role as private school leaders, and those have become 2 of the most downloaded episodes in the history of the podcast. And I just think his work is so applicable and so helpful to our work as private school leaders. And so on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, we're going to discuss and apply this important quote from James Clear. Quote, every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. End quote. So before we jump into that, I just want to ask you, you're putting the finishing touches on this school year, or you've already wrapped up your school year. So were you happy with how productive you were? Were you happy with how you were able to overcome the tyranny of the urgent? Were you happy with this school year and your boundaries between school and home? Were you happy with how often you got into classrooms? Were you happy with how the year went to the point where you want to run it back just exactly the same this fall as you did for this year that just ended? And if your answer is yes to all of those questions, then congratulations, good for you. You had an amazing year. But if your answer was no, or I'm not sure, or not really, then I can help you this summer to make this next school year the best school year of your career. And I can do that by working with you one-on-one this summer. I have 4 summer leadership coaching spots open right now. And I can work with you to make this next school year the best school year of your career. Help you overcome that biggest struggle, help you reach your biggest goal, help you build systems for productivity and time management, help you build sustainable boundaries between school and home. This is what I do. And the way it works is you just shoot me an email, mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. That's mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. We'll hop on a Zoom call free for 20 minutes and just talk and go from there. And if you don't believe the stuff that I'm saying, that I can get you those results, don't take my word for it. Just go to theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching and read almost 30 testimonials from current and former coaching clients, and then shoot me an email. So I'd love to work with you. And I'd love to give you a free gift every episode. And today it's called The 6 Things That Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader. And this is a 6-page PDF that will be a game changer for you. And I guarantee you that if you do these 6 things, that the teachers at your school will be happy to follow you. And you can pick this guide up at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. Again, free for you, the 6 things every private school teacher wants from their leader. Just go to theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. So I said that today we're going to take this quote from James Clear and apply it to you as a private school leader. And the quote is, "Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become." And the way I've set up this episode is part 1, we're going to discuss the quote and apply it to you. Part 2, I'm going to tell you the 4 biggest obstacles that keep you from living this quote. And then we're going to get practical and apply it. We're going to apply it in 2 ways. And then I'm going to give you 3 strategies for each. So application number 1 is in the area of productivity and urgency and the difference between helping and rescuing your teachers. We're going to kind of mush that together and apply this quote. And then in application number 2, it's going to be about being truly present with your family. And I'm going to give you 3 strategies as well for that, how you can live the quote. So let's talk about what James Clear means by this quote. So if we zoom out a click or two, we can see that in his book, Atomic Habits, his big idea is that small improvements multiplied by time create extraordinary results. And he also says that most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And some people, the reason that they don't vote is because they say, well, 1 vote isn't going to make a difference. But you put all those votes together and it becomes 50 million votes, and then that candidate is elected. And so I think that as private school leaders, we really tend to focus a lot on goals. And I've talked to you before about kind of falling out of love with goals and falling in love with progress. And one of my favorite quotes of James Clear is he says, "We don't rise to the level of our habits, we fall to the level of our systems." And habits is all about self-discipline and sticking with something and just, okay, great. But what we really need is that we need systems. And that will be our safety net. You know, you're up there on the trapeze and you have a couple of bad days and you fall to the level of your systems that you've built. You don't have to rise to the level of your self-discipline and the habits that you've created. As private school leaders, we tend to focus on outcomes, but James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, reminds us to focus on identity. And so instead of saying, well, I really need to get organized, you could say, I'm becoming an organized leader. Or instead of saying, well, I really need to lose weight, you can say, well, I want to become a healthier person. And so, you know, let's say this idea of that you want to become a more productive, organized leader, then every action you take is a vote for you becoming that person. So when you handle email correctly and you plan, you claim white space on your calendar and you use your index card, you keep casting another vote for you becoming the kind of leader who is productive. Little votes, little changes, little actions multiplied by time. And so you know that this principle applies everywhere. You want to become a healthier person, every workout is a vote for you to become that person. Every time you eat healthy instead of go through a drive-through and get fast food, that's a vote for you to become a healthy person. You want to have a stronger relationship with your spouse or partner. Every conversation is a vote. Every date night is a vote. You want to have a healthier culture at your school. Every time you check in on a teacher, that's a vote. Every time you pop into a classroom, that's a vote. Every time you intentionally encourage one of your staff members, that's a vote. Every time you hold someone accountable, that's a vote for a healthier school culture with better teacher morale. So you're casting votes with every action, and then all those votes, all those tiny changes add up for you to become the person that you want to be. And the great news about this is that you know that we have good days and bad days when we try to lead at our private schools. And the great news is that one action or one vote doesn't determine the outcome for you as a leader or as a spouse or as a parent. But, okay, so for example, one healthy meal isn't going to change your life. One workout isn't going to change your life. One time popping into the classroom isn't going to change the culture at your school. But if you do any of those things multiple times over multiple days that become weeks, that become months, then all of those votes add up and you do become that person. And so, again, it seems tiny, it seems small, it seems insignificant today, but the big focus of the book, Atomic Habits, is that tiny changes multiplied by time make a huge difference. And so we are going to cast a vote for the person that we wish to become. So you've got the concept. Now what about the obstacles? So I want to talk quickly about 4 obstacles that keep us from living this quote. Okay? And so obstacle number 1 is the tyranny of the urgent. And you figured I was probably going to say that, right? Because as private school leaders, we just have this endless supply of urgent situations, whether it's that parent email that has capital letters and exclamation points, a teacher issue, coverage issues, student discipline, your enrollment numbers, you didn't meet your fundraising goal, you've got to prepare the board report, the roof is leaking, the parking lot needs to be plowed, all the urgent things. And so most of us, for most of our career, we spend the day going from putting out one fire to putting out the next fire and reacting. But if we're constantly reacting to the tyranny of the urgent, it becomes so difficult to make an intentional choice about who we want to become. I want to be a productive leader. I want to be a person who leads a school with a healthy culture. I want to be a present spouse or partner. It's so hard because if we're simply trying to just get through the day and survive the day, we're not voting for our future self. We're just surviving. So the first obstacle to living out the quote is the tyranny of the urgent. So don't panic. I'm going to give you strategies. I always give you strategies at the end of the episode, okay? But I think it's important to understand the concept behind the quote, identify the obstacles, and then we'll get to the strategies, okay? So obstacle number 2 to living out this quote is the belief that big change requires big action. And this was certainly true with me when it came to losing weight. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to starve myself and I'm going to work out like a crazy person every single day. Well, that wasn't sustainable and it didn't work. And then I stopped. And so you can think about that and apply it in a lot of different ways in your life that, we think that big change requires big action. So we kind of have to change our paradigm about that, it's the tiny things multiplied by time. And so sometimes we think, well, okay, we need to overhaul the entire student handbook and the entire employee handbook, and we need to overhaul the master schedule, and we need to change all of these things. And maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Because, again, James Clear reminds us that the change, the transformation, becoming the person that you want to be, becoming the leader that you want to be, the spouse or partner that you want to be, the parent that you want to be. It comes from tiny changes multiplied by time. And so we have an obstacle that we believe that big change requires big action. I get that, okay? Not necessarily true. Obstacle number 3 to living the quote is fatigue. Most of you are exhausted. You're carrying around everyone else's emotions. You're stressed out about your enrollment numbers. You're having ruminating thoughts about how you handled that parent situation. You've got open teaching positions that you're not sure how you're going to fill. You got pressure from the board. You've got a couple of things going that are big problems with the facility, and the list goes on. And so we're tired. We're exhausted. And when we're exhausted, we default to convenience. I don't know about you, but that's true for me for sure. If I'm really, really tired, am I going to make a meal with healthy ingredients at home, or am I going to go through a drive-through? I'm going through that drive-through, okay? So think about it. The more tired we are, the more we default to convenience. The more our discipline breaks down. And throw in there stress too. When we're tired and stressed, I'm a big comfort food eater when I'm stressed. You know how this works. You know how this goes. And so the convenient route works against our desired identity that we're clamoring for, that we're trying to get. And think about this. The tired version of ourselves rarely makes good decisions, right? That's true about me. Is that true about you? The tired version of ourselves rarely makes good decisions. And we're tired all the time because you have a nearly impossible job, if not an impossible job. So fatigue is another obstacle to living the quote. And then the fourth obstacle is short-term thinking. And I think that this is because a lot of our work are decisions that we have to make quickly, and then we are evaluated by those decisions, by the results of those decisions. Did you suspend, or did you give that after-school detention or suspension or expel that student? Did you meet with that teacher? Did you fix that problem? Did that work? What happened this week? It's all about recency bias in the most previous 24 hours. But the tricky part is that really, really good leadership is the long game. Culture is a long game. Trust is a long game. A healthy school financially is the long game. Relationships, a long game. So, again, it's hard when our default is solve the problem now. You have this bias and this default towards problem solving, fixing problems, and what's next. That makes you good at your job, but it also plays exactly against kind of living out this quote. Because it's this delayed gratification. It's the long term. It's the vote that you're casting today for the person you wish to become. That may not pay off for months or even years. That's a huge obstacle. Because private school leadership is almost always about now. Urgent. So I think it was important to identify those 4 big obstacles to what you're dealing with, to trying to live out the quote. The 4 obstacles are the tyranny of the urgent, the belief that big change requires big action, fatigue and exhaustion, and short-term thinking. Okay, so now we're going to get practical and apply this, and we're going to apply it in 2 different ways. I want to apply it first of all, the first one is with productivity, urgency, who's defining urgency, the difference between helping and rescuing, kind of all of that mushed together, right? So let's identify the problem with living the quote when it comes to this. One of the biggest problems to you being a productive private school leader is when you decide you're going to rescue people instead of help people. And so I want you to think about a blank piece of paper. You draw a line down the middle, and on one side of the line it says helping, and on the other side of the line it says rescuing. We're helpers. We are servant leaders. We are people who feel good when we help solve problems and help people. But when we're too busy rescuing instead of helping, we are really, really busy, but we're not very productive. We're super helpful, but we're not really very effective. And so here's what I'm going for here, and this is why this is tied to productivity and urgency. With my coaching clients over the past couple years, if I were to pick the most common frustration, it is teachers and staff who are bringing things to the leader and they want help with it, but they're all tier 1 things. They're all things that teacher or staff member, that it's reasonable for them to do one more thing and handle that problem, but they're not doing it, and they're bringing it to admin, and they're getting you involved way earlier than they should, and then it becomes a scale and a capacity problem. Because if you're helping with all of those things, you're not going to get to your work until the school gets quiet, when the kids leave and the teachers leave for the day. And then that means you leave later with less energy, and then you run that back day after day after day. Am I describing you? Am I describing you and your school and your teachers, your staff? You're already struggling with productivity. You're already struggling with other people defining urgency. And then your default is to solve problems, to help people, sometimes to rescue people, and to expedite very quickly that solution. But every time that we help someone or just handle their tier 1 problem, we're rescuing them. And you are casting a vote to be a reactive, exhausted leader. Every time you rescue someone from a tier 1 issue that they should be doing themselves, you're casting a vote to become a reactive and exhausted leader. But every time you help someone, you're casting a vote to become a proactive, strategic, healthy leader. That sounds great. That sounds wonderful. But how do I do that? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 strategies. Strategy number 1, pause before responding. There's so much power in the pause. When you're out and about in the school and somebody is like, "Hey, can you help? Do you have a second? Can you help with? Could you call this parent? Could you talk to this kid? Could you blah blah blah?" Calling the parent and talking to the kid, that's all well and good if the teacher has already called the parent, has already talked to the kid, has already moved the kid's seat, has already cut the number of math problems in half and given that a week and see if it made the situation better. Has the teacher done a few things that are reasonable for teachers to do before they get you involved? And even if you say yes to that, most of my teachers are that way, let's say 60% of your teachers handle their tier 1 stuff. Well, that still means that 40% of your teachers are handing it to you. And we're just taking it. Yeah, give it to me. I'll handle it. Sure, I'll handle it because we feel like we're helping, but we're really rescuing, number 1. We feel like we're being servant leaders. That's the dark side of servant leadership. We feel like we're actually being seen as a competent and useful and helpful leader, but really what it is that we're just saying yes to everything, and we're not building resilience or problem-solving skills in our teachers, and we're not asking them to do their jobs. So we're going to pause, all right? Strategy number 2 is let your calendar define your urgency. I said before that, too many people are defining our urgency. Our email inbox defines urgency. Your email inbox is a chronological list of everyone else's priorities, everyone else's urgency. And so sometimes people appear in your doorway. Sometimes I have several coaching clients who one of the reasons that they're not out and about in the school that much is because everyone's always stopping them and trying to give them problems. I'll talk about that in a second. Let your calendar define your urgency. Claim that white space on Friday afternoon for what you want your priorities to be for the following week, and then let your priorities define your day. Schedule your good intentions. Block off time for classroom visits or pop-ins. Block off time for the things that are the proactive, intentional things that you want to do. Will those sometimes be interrupted? Yes. But if they're not on there, they're not going to happen at all. And every time you claim white space and then actually honor your calendar, you're casting a vote to being a proactive leader. And then strategy number 3 is to listen but give it back. And this goes back to the tier 1 stuff I was talking about. I have a coaching client in Nashville, and she taught me this idea of listen but give it back. You've heard me talk about crying baby problems. You're walking down the hall and someone's like, hey, can you call this parent, or can you talk to Jacob because I'm really having blah, blah. Okay. They have a crying baby and they want to hand the crying baby to you. But have they done 3 things to try and get the baby to stop crying? Or is it that they don't want to hold a crying baby and you're so good at getting babies to stop crying? Well, then every time you take a walk around campus, you come back to your office with 6 crying babies. And they cry all day. And you keep dealing with them because they're crying and it's loud and it's annoying and it feels urgent, right? And you get those problems solved. You just solve the tier 1 problems of a bunch of your teachers. And then, like I said, when the school gets quiet and the kids and the students leave, then you start on your work. That is not sustainable. That is not leadership. And so listen but give it back is they come to you or they pop in or they email you or they stop you in the hallway and you listen and you say, I'll tell you what, here's what I want you to do. I want you to try this one more thing. And you have to come up with that one more thing in the moment. And you say, I want you to try this one more thing, give it a week, and then email me and let me know how it's going. That's listening but giving it back. And if you start to do that, if you start to train yourself to do that, you are training yourself, you're training them, and you're casting a vote to be a proactive leader. You're casting a vote for your teachers to handle their tier 1 stuff. You're casting a vote that you're going to work on your work during the day. And obviously sometimes you're going to work on it in the evenings too, but this is going to make a huge difference for you. And then application number 2 to wrap this up is we want to cast a vote for being truly present with your family. This is the kind of person that you want to be. You want to be a truly present spouse, partner, parent. So how do we cast votes for that? Well, listen, it's hard. Most of us, dinner is interrupted by emails. I used to check emails first thing in the morning when I woke up before I even said good morning to my wife of 35 years who I share a bed with. And then, you're on the couch, Netflix, watching a movie with the family, and it's just like, well, hey, I got to take this, or I got to go deal with this, or, Saturday mornings with the family are interrupted because you're going to just check this one thing, and then you just disappear. And then before you know it, you're doing the thing on weeknights and weekends, but it also could be that you're just bringing home a lot of that mental ruminating thoughts, distractibility, and you're physically there, but your attention is not there. You're not present. And I really believe that our smartphone has become this electronic leash that is constantly pulling us back into school, even when we're home. And it becomes such a huge challenge that to cast a vote for being the spouse or parent or grandparent or best friend that you want to be. Casting a vote to be present. That's the kind of person you want to be. Well, how do we do that? Okay, I'm going to give you 3 strategies and then we'll wrap it up. Strategy number 1 is create a daily shutdown ritual. So at school, you're going to create a ritual that at the end of the day, you're going to schedule the time of day that you want to leave. And then you're going to start this shutdown ritual. Many of you have a bedtime routine, and you start to do certain things, and it's your routine that you do before you go to bed. I want you to have a routine of things that you do before you leave for the day. You're looking over tomorrow. You've heard me talk about your index card. Some people do their index card before they leave. They do their index card for the next day. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link in the show notes the episode of the 4 productivity hacks for busy private school leaders. And the show notes are at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 189. But review your calendar, try and clear up some loose ends, write down your unfinished tasks. That's where the index card comes in. You're going to kind of try to tie a loop on what you can do at school. And as you're doing this ritual, you're saying to yourself, work is finished for today. Now I'm going to talk about the work that's going to pop up at home. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because I know I'm not living in the clouds with my head in the clouds here. I know that stuff comes up, and okay. But it does help to have a shutdown ritual at the end of the day. And it gives you some psychological closure, because if you don't ever have closure to the school day, then the school day is going to completely follow you home, and it's going to be throughout the weeknight, throughout the weekend. And so we have these rituals like funerals and graduations that indicate the end of something. A ritual to end your day will psychologically give you permission that you can begin your weeknight or begin your weekend. Okay, and then we give them to strategy number 2, because this is called put boundaries around your smartphone, because we know that the way that school then invades our home is typically through our smartphone. Okay? And so you've heard me say this before. Turn off notifications. I think you should turn off notifications for everything. Your school email, your personal email, your social media, when someone likes a post or someone posts. I'm a big believer that the only thing that your smartphone should be able to do is to receive texts and receive phone calls. Now that just sent a chill down the spine of some of you that are listening, and others of you have been doing that for years. But I strongly encourage you to turn off notifications. Move your school's email icon at least 2 swipes. Push the button on your phone. It lights up. There's your home screen. I'm asking you this question. How many swipes between your home screen and your school email icon? Most people, it's 0 swipes or 1 swipe. I have several coaching clients that report when they move their email icon 2 swipes from their home screen, that it reduces how often they check email by 85% within 2 weeks. It's about creating friction because we don't have the self-discipline. Another strategy is putting the phone out of reach. I didn't have the self-discipline to not check email when I woke up first thing in the morning or to check email right before I went to bed because I was charging my phone on my nightstand. And I know many of you use your phone as an alarm. Okay, first of all, you could go buy an alarm. You can charge your phone out of reach. You can put your phone just out of reach during the evening when you're on the couch, when you're having a conversation with one of your kids or with your spouse or partner. I started charging my phone in the next room when I went to bed, and it changed my life. I'm not saying you need to do that because I know some of you, you've got kids that drive, kids that are in activities, you have elderly parents. You need to have your phone nearby, but it could be nearby and just out of reach from your bed. In your bedroom, charging, out of reach, could be a huge game changer for you. So we're trying to increase friction between you and your smartphone so that you're not constantly using that as the portal to do schoolwork. Listen, you don't accidentally drift into being fully present for your family, but you can very easily accidentally drift away from being present and being on your smartphone doing work for school. So we want to create friction and we want to be more intentional. Okay, easier said than done, I know, but these strategies will help you. And then the final strategy is to have a designated workplace at home for weeknights and weekends so that when you get a text, when you're going to check email, don't do it on the couch, don't do it in bed. Get up and go to that workspace, even if it's a chair at the kitchen table or the counter in the kitchen or wherever. If you have to get up and go to that workspace to do work for school, you can still do work for school. Let's say you say to your family, "Hey, I need to go do do some work for 45 minutes." Okay, get up and go to that designated workspace and set a timer for 45 minutes and do the work. That's fine. I know that all the work doesn't fit into the school day and that we do have to do work. That isn't the problem. The problem is that we don't have a bucket. It's just the water's everywhere, every weeknight and every weekend. And so all I'm saying is, yeah, go ahead and do the work, but get up, move your body to a designated workspace and set a timer. And then when that goes off, you go back to your evening and back to your family. I'm telling you, if you try it and you can do it some of the time, it's going to make a huge difference. Have a designated workspace. Okay. So our big takeaways from today's episode, we're breaking down James Clear's quote that every action you take is a vote for the person that you wish to become. We talked about the 4 obstacles that keep private school leaders from living out this quote: the tyranny of the urgent, the belief that big change requires big action, fatigue, and short-term thinking. And then we had 2 applications. One was about productivity, urgency, and helping versus rescuing. How are we going to live out this quote? We're going to pause before responding, let our calendar define urgency, and listen but give it back. And then finally, application number 2, how do we be really, really present with our family and live out this quote? Live and become that person. The person we wish to become is a truly present person in our home. We're going to create a daily shutdown ritual. We're going to put boundaries around the smartphone usage, and we're going to have a designated workspace. And so your call to action this week is to get a piece of paper, take 15 minutes, write this quote at the top of the piece of paper. Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. And then for 15 minutes, just write down whatever comes to mind. Just write down whatever comes to mind. Quick reminder, the 6 things that every private school teacher wants from their leader is at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And another reminder that I would love to work with you this summer. I have 4 coaching spots open. Shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. If you get any help from these episodes, please share this link with another leader or a rising leader at your school. I appreciate you. I am so grateful that you took some time to be here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.